Omega is probably one of the most recognizable brands in the world for timepieces. If you have an Omega and you're considering selling it or trading it in, here's what you need to know. Today with me, I have Nick, a huge Omega fan and pretty knowledgeable about the brand itself, to discuss what it takes to sell your Omega and what's the best way to do it. Nick, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good. Avi, thank you for having me on the show again.
Of course. Nick, what do you got on your wrist over there?
Not an Omega. I have a 36 millimeter Datejust. It's actually Peter's watch, but I was
going to say, did you steal it from your girlfriend?
Yeah.
I'm just messing around. Yeah, it looks like a Peter watch. Nick, so we talked about selling Rolexes previously. Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk about selling Omegas because they're a little bit more. There's probably a little bit more difficulty in selling an Omega than there is in selling a Rolex. Not just because the market, but in actually finding out the details of a Omega or your Omega and figuring out how much it would go for. How many is not really a good question. Have you dealt with customers by selling their Rolexes, trading in their Rolexes? You know, have you had any experience with that recently?
Well, with Omega, obviously, yeah.
Omega, not Rolex. Rolex, yes. Omega,
no, I mean, I've kind of, I've made it pretty well known that I do love, I'm a huge fan of the brand Omega. My grandfather actually wore a Speedmaster, which is why I bought a Speedmaster for my first watch. So yeah, I deal with that, pretty consistently. I get a good amount of people looking to either buy, an older Omega or sell an older Omega. And there's a few different things that I kind of lead them towards, or, kind of have them avoid, if you will. Yeah.
So Omega is one of those brands that doesn't get the hype as much. It doesn't get the model appreciation. Mm-hmm. Although it is a famous brand, they're solid watches. I mean, you can't say anything negative about them other than the fact that, it's not a Daytona. It's not, it's not going to go up in price, 3x, 4x, 5x its retail price. Except for a couple of, a handful of models like the Snoopy, for example. Let's talk about the first part of trying to sell your Omega. First thing you need to know is, which Omega do you have? I mean, there's a ton of Speedmasters, a ton of, Seamasters.
Yeah, so you have, look at your core models, right? So obviously the Speedmaster is Omega's most notable line, right? But within that line, you have the Heritages, you have the Professionals, you have Reduced. The list goes on, right? And within those, subcategories, there's 4 to 5 other references within that line.
So assuming you own an Omega, you could see right on the dial it says Speedmaster, but you have no idea which Speedmaster it is, what the actual reference number would be. Mm-hmm. According to our research and our guide in selling your Omega, there are 2 types of ways or 2 different methods of figuring out the reference number. So before 2007, it was engraved on the case itself. After 2007, it's no longer engraved on the case.
Yeah, so the way to kind of look at that too is they actually go by 2 different serial number patterns, right? So pre-2007, it was an 8-digit serial. Okay. So you would actually see on the, 8-digit reference number. So you would actually see on the case back that 8-digit number engraved in, right? Now, my Speedmaster Professionals of 2021 does not have that. The only thing that has it is the serial number, encased in the bottom of the lug. But if I were to lose my papers, I would kind of be, without having that knowledge, I wouldn't really know what my, how modern my watch was, or really anything about it.
And obviously, Googling your serial number won't show you anything.
No.
Okay.
No, we're not.
And we assume Omega does not have a public database that you could search.
So Omega does, or they did have a, My Watch tab where you can kind of register things online. For example, my Plo Proof is registered. We'll get into that with archives later. And then my Speedmaster are also registered to it. So, I do have, kind of more than ample enough, information backed up with Omega knowing that I own these watches and myself owning them.
So assuming you're at a yard sale and you find an Omega, if it has the serial number engraved on the back, you right away know it's pre-2007.
Yes, but I believe they started doing that in the early 1980s?
1988.
Okay, so early 80s or late 80s. But if you were to go back even further into what they know as the bumper movements and things like that, and the pie pan dials, right? They did not engrave the serial or the reference number on the back of those watches. And I'm talking like watches from 60s and back, right? So the chances of you finding a Omega from the 80s at a garage sale, it's not unheard of.
But maybe you handed down one from, a father or grandfather. So just right off the bat, easy ways to tell, at least a window of time would be, is the reference number engraved on the back? If it is, you know right off the bat it's from 1988 to 2007.
Yeah, correct.
After 2007, they went into a different reference number.
Right. So
system.
they went to the 14-digit reference number, which I like to joke is the cell phone number. So if you can remember if you can remember that reference, you can remember.
It's insane. So the new reference number is broken down into numerous, I guess, categories of what it means. So I'm just going to, because I cannot remember 14 digits, nor can I remember the naming convention that they used, I'm going to refer to my notes here and read this off to you. Group A refers to the Omega family of watches. For example, 310 is a Speedmaster.
Correct.
Group B refers to the case and bracelet material of the watch. For example, if the number is 30, it's steel. Another material for steel and another material for the case, plus assorted metal for the bracelet. Could be steel in this instance. It's all steel. Group C refers to the case size. Example, 42 equals 42 millimeters. Group D refers to the movement type. For example, 50 equals a mechanical chronograph. Group E refers to the dial color and material. For example, 01 equals black. And Group F refers to the specific sequence number of the watch. For example, 001 is the first in that sequence.
Right.
So, once I guess you figure out what the reference number is, you have every detail possible about the watch.
But the funny part is not a lot of people know that the spaces between numbers are actually representative of a group outside of
I got you.
other fellow Omega nerds
Or people that are watching this episode.
Exactly. Now that you know. Yeah, I mean, that's when I remember doing. I went head first into my love for Omega. When I bought my Speedmaster, I'm like, all right, well, why is this reference number 14 digits long? It makes no sense. Why can't it just be 11,65700 or 11,6500 is a Panda? Everyone knows that.
I don't know.
Well, now you know. Now you take a Speedmaster that has 14 digits.
Oh, you're talking about Rolex. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
to compare Rolex's main chronograph to Omega's, it's ridiculous.
I always wondered why Omega has such long reference numbers, and now I know. Yeah, still unnecessary. I want to say.
I think it's it really separates Omega from everyone else. I mean, look, the fact that you start reading off into numbers and some halfway through, it's like, all right, you have an Omega. Can you just tell me what it is?
Yeah. So that's the conversation we typically have with Roman. Like, who needs to know reference numbers? I'm not saying Rolex 11655, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm saying it's a Rolex Daytona, black dial, stainless, blah, blah. That's much easier to understand.
Right.
When it comes to Omega, not a single person on earth knows the reference numbers.
Well, I'm
going to guess.
I mean, I knew mine for a little bit, and then I started buying other watches, and I kind of lost
like a credit card number.
I know, which is horrible because I also remember my credit card number. Yeah. But no, I mean, I completely lost my train of thought.
Good, because now that we have this pause, I want to ask the audience to show us some support. If you like this episode, if you like the show, if you like us putting in the time and effort to do this, I plead with you to please show the support, like, comment, subscribe, write a review if you're listening to this in your car on the way to work. We want to keep doing this, but we need to see that what we're doing well. Back to the episode. If you don't have the paperwork for the watch itself, which clearly would state the reference number, the serial number, and everything, there are a couple ways to at least try to figure out which watch you have. Now, obviously, the simplest way is to go to omega.com and try to find your model, right?
Right. I mean, Omega does have, I will, again, I know last time I was on the show, we kind of crapped on Omega, but I do have a very strong love for Omega, right? And I give a lot of applause to Omega because they keep for the most part, all of their watches are still on the site. So let's say you were to go find, for example, a older Seamaster from the 90s. If you were to type in that serial number, or each blue wave dial Seamaster Professional Quartz or whatever, 9 times out of 10, Omega will actually be one of the first sites to pop up.
Okay.
Which is cool because that watch is, was discontinued in the 90s.
Yeah.
So they will still have that information on their site.
So you could find a reference number that way. You could also take a picture of your watch and try to do a Google image search and see what comes up. Obviously, you could use the forums, Reddit R Watches or the subreddit Watches. I think there has to be an Omega subreddit.
Oh, absolutely.
There's Omega Forums, which is its own separate website. You could take it to an authorized Omega dealer and ask them, what watch is this? Give me the reference number. And you could also order Omega extract papers. Tell me about extract papers. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I actually went through this process a few months ago. My Omega Plow-Proof was from the early 70s. It's like one of the first ones to really hit the market. And I have been hunting for this watch pretty much since I started here. I don't know why. It's an ugly piece of metal, but it's mine, and I love everything about it. But I wanted to make it as complete as possible. So I brought it to our local Omega boutique, kind of explained the situation. They sent the watch in to be checked out. I had actually had it serviced. And now I have an original Omega Plow-Proof with archive papers, right? And mine was a little bit more expensive because I had to factor in, service and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, if you want to keep a watch as complete as possible and you want to make sure that it's certified, it is 100% authentic, it's the way to go.
Okay. So we got the reference number figured out. We found it either using images, extract papers, case back. We got that part down. Next is we have the serial number. Now, the serial number is engraved on the case back. Now, is that for
So
all
it's not
models,
on
or?
the case back. It is technically, it's right on the lugs.
Okay.
So for the Speedmaster, I'm not wearing mine today, but I believe if you flip it over, it'll actually be right on the 7 o'clock side.
Okay. And typically has 7 or 8 digits. I'm wondering whether I don't have that information here, but I'm wondering whether that's standard throughout, doesn't matter what year it was produced.
So I only own 2 Omegas in my collection currently. Obviously the one from the 70s and then the one from 2021. So I couldn't really speak too much when it comes to what I know that the current Seamasters are also the same thing where it's engraved on the lugs. I've seen a few older Seamasters that do also have that engraving on the back, but they are for the most part not engraved on the case back.
Okay.
They usually are set right on the lug hand side.
They are also engraved on the movement itself. So if you get it open, you can see it
Right, then you
there.
can double check it from there.
Omega does use a different serial number system for the Speedmaster. So if you're trying to determine, when your Speedmaster was made, you have to look at the correct, serial number chart. Not, it's not gonna. If you're popping into Google and hoping to find, when it was made, Speedmasters are going to be different years than typical Omegas, according to our research, of course. Obviously, we want to make sure that you never share your serial number publicly online.
Right.
Don't post it in a forum and ask, "Hey, what year is this?" Not a good idea.
No. No, it is not.
The next part of being able to sell your Rolex, being able to sell your Omega, is documentation, boxes, all papers, everything that you're able to gather along with it. Now, we did talk about extract papers, which means if you lost yours, they were damaged in a fire, you bought it without it. If you do want to have legitimate papers from Omega, how do you go through the extract process?
Yeah, so speaking of experience, I literally just walked in to Omega with this watch that they had no idea, what it was. I was like, oh, this is an original Plow-Proof, blah, blah, blah. I want to get extract papers for it and have it serviced and get everything running correctly. It was very simple. It took it's actually on its way back now. So it's been about 6 months since I've had this watch. Keep in mind, this is, it was an entirely stainless steel piece, right? So there's no way to get into the watch outside of pulling out the bezel, the double crystals. It's a whole ordeal. But I do know of people that have had older Speedmasters that they've got it back within 2 to 3 months.
Okay. How much did it cost?
With all the servicing and
Forget
everything.
servicing, extract only. Do you know? Did it break it down
I'd have
for you?
to. No, they didn't break it down for me. They just told me what it was.
Gotcha. If you are missing, any boxes, any papers, anything that would, document that the watch is what it is, or that it was originally purchased, you're looking at what, 10 to 20 less than if you have those.
Yeah,
as far as somebody paying you for it.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair number. The problem with that is Omega unfortunately takes quite a hit when it comes to the resale market in general, right? Outside of your your limited edition pieces and your Snoopies and things of that nature, which are not limited edition pieces, right? So typically, and this is no knock at Omega, but they are for the most part readily available at any given time. The only models that are really hard to get are the Snoopies and certain, limited editions and things of that nature, precious metals. So without papers, I would say you're already taking a hit. You're going to take, 5-10% more on top of the hit that you'd be taking.
Yeah, just for not having
the papers.
And on to figuring out how much you're going to be able to get for your Omega. Our typical sources for are the public trying to find out the pricing for their watches. You have eBay sold listings. If you go to eBay and you search for your specific reference number, you can filter it by seeing sold listings, and that will give you at least some indication of what your watch is worth on the market. Now, you have to understand that eBay also takes fees.
Right.
There are fees for servicing if the watch needs to be serviced. There are fees for marketing. There are fees for overhead if you're a large dealer like ourselves. So if you saw it selling for $5,000, it's unlikely you're going to get $5,000 for it.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're using a platform like eBay or a platform like Chrono24, because obviously you are factoring in those fees. The other thing that too really boils down to is what model you're selling and things of that nature, and kind of what you bought it for. Price point on buying them originally is kind of what's key here.
Let's assume, for example, I go into Google and I type in, Speedmaster and the reference number, and a bunch of websites come up. Chrono24, eBay comes up. I don't know, a couple of gray market dealers. I click on a gray market dealer's website. I look at the price. Let's just, for shits and giggles, assume that price is $7,000. How much less do you think they would have had to purchase the watch to be selling it for $7,000?
I mean, look, not to go into too much detail, but I can tell you just from experience that
Go into too much detail.
Detail. I mean, we can get Omega, pretty much brand new for about anywhere from 15 to 25% off original retail.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you're buying a Sapphire sandwich, which I believe before the price hike was just under $8,000. Right. So let's just say 25% off, which is high. It all depends on where we're able to get it from at that time. So we would really need to be 25% off of whatever the Speedmaster was originally, okay. And that's brand new. I mean, pre-owned, that's when you start to really dip into you're taking even more of it.
On that point, would Omega as a brand be considered a good trade-up watch? Because you clearly are going to get more value for it on a trade than you would on a buy.
I would agree to that to an extent. Certain models take more of a hit than others, and they really don't trade well. For example, Speedmasters really kind of hold that same value when it comes to trade-in, regardless. Omega for me is that brand, or for Omega the brand for me is more a brand that people who are true watch fanatics, right? They are people that love the Seamaster. They've had they have a heritage with it. For example, like their grandfathers wore one, or there's someone wore a Speedmaster, or so on and so forth. So a lot of people will trade them, and then a few months later, I'm like, oh, I want another one. Like, I miss my Speedmaster, right? So I to an extent, I agree that they're a good trade-up watch, but it all really depends on the model, condition, and what you have with it.
Okay. So, I mean, it might even be because they're such watch fanatics, they're not looking to sell. They're not looking to trade.
I mean, I think everyone kind of knows, especially people that have owned a few Omegas, know that, you're not buying the watch as an investment, right? Outside of maybe buying a Snoopy or, somewhat like with a Porsche Club of America Speedmaster, like things like that. Those kind of, not the one-offs, but the harder to get pieces, right? I think that's kind of where you're looking at watches that it's like, all right, well, I'm going to buy this watch. There's only 1,200 of them made.
Okay. This would actually probably be a good point to talk about the fact that, like, we have a partner that offers loans against watches. So if you own a Speedmaster, you probably purchased it because you love it. You love the brand. You didn't buy it as an investment. If you need to access the value of that watch, which is why you're looking to sell it, for example, but you don't, you might not want to get rid of it, probably a good opportunity to take advantage of our partners, Wax. They offer lending against watches. You could borrow, I don't know, I think it's like up to 60% of the value of your watch at like super low interest rates, and then pay it back and you still have your watch.
Right.
Here's a question. If I'm looking to trade or sell my Omega, should I service it before doing so?
It's a great question. So I'm going to break this down into two parts. Any modern Omega, right, for the most part, is what I like to call bulletproof, right? Your new Speedmasters with the 18 or the newer caliber movement. I know it's 861. I'm not sure if it's 1861 or 3861. Brain things. I have never had an issue with that watch.
Okay.
I've, pretty much beaten the hell out of it. Now, that being said, if let's say you have a Speedmaster reduced, right, you probably bought that watch for under $3,000, right? And if you got it at a great deal, you probably bought it for under $2,000. The problem with that one, or the reduced movements, is they are notorious for high repair costs,
Okay.
and are notorious for being unreliable, right? So
you're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't.
exactly. So my thing with that would be, if you have an older one, just send it in.
Okay.
Just send it in, because whatever gray market dealer that you're selling it to already knows this information. They already know that they're going to, at minimum, have to put $500 worth of work into that watch. And that's at minimum.
Yeah.
Right? Now, for the newer ones, like, we all kind of, Marco and I have had this conversation many times where he's asked me about, what Speedmasters he should be buying, what Speedmasters he shouldn't be buying, and he's also a whiz when it comes to movement, so he has a very good idea of what's reliable and what's not. But even, I try and keep everyone away from the reduced models, because they're not, unless if it's your first watch, it's like, well, I really just want a Speedmaster. I could care less, as long as I have that, the design for the most part outside of, the Mach 40s and things like that has not changed over the past 60 some odd years.
So your answer is typically no.
Yeah, I mean, look.
To summarize, the hour-long spiel you just gave, no.
My answer is no. Just send it in. We'll take care of it. I mean, every watch that we sell.
Yeah, I mean, other than the time it takes, the cost could be anywhere between $500 to $1,000. Plus, if it's a vintage watch, you want to, most people prefer it in its original,
Exactly.
I guess, condition.
Well, and with its original parts, correct, and
go.
not any reproduction.
So, shameless plug here. We do buy Omegas. We buy plenty of Omegas.
So let us know if you want to sell your Omega, because they're a great watch to have in stock. The brand as a general is a great starter brand, and it's a great way to get people into the the collect.
Yeah, we have a ton of demand for Omegas. So if you're selling your Omega, visit sell.luxurybazaar.com today.
That was very QVC of you.
There you go. Nick, anything else we should add to people that are looking to sell their Omegas? Anything they should know?
No, I mean, I would think do your research before you start selling anything.
Or just call us.
Or just call us. I mean, listen, we're more than happy to talk to you about anything that you need when you're looking to sell. If you have any certain questions about whatever. Phones are always on.
Yeah, or text us, or email us, or WhatsApp us. You could do all these sorts of great things today. Nick, thank you so much for your time and for your Omega knowledge and experience. I appreciate it. I hope that our audience appreciate it as well. If you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, tell the world about us, and we'll keep doing this as much as we can for you guys. Have a great day. We'll see you guys next time.
See you later.